Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first annual May Day Mental Health Game Jam. I am your host, Alchemist, and I am joined by these three lovely gentlemen to my right. I believe that is my right. And we're just going to start at the top and have everyone introduce themselves and kind of tell me how you are a part of this inaugural Game Jam with that we're collaborating with DeepWell.
Hi everyone. My name's Tim Collings. I'm the interim executive director and director of operations at Global Game Jam. I'll be helping to run the jam from the logistical side of things. I'll be on Discord answering your questions and helping you with any technical issues maybe you have with uploading your games and giving you all the information about when things are happening and what to expect throughout the jam. And pass it off to our partners here at DeepWell, who we welcome today.
Hello there, I'm Shahid. I'm at DeepWell and I handle evangelism and engagement with developers and some production duties as well, which means paperwork generally, that kind of thing.
I'm Tom, and this is Pudge. It's my boy. And I'm a director at DeepWell. I'm working on the first internal game that we're going to release.
So you guys have kind of told me a little bit about what you do at DeepWell, but for those in the chat who may not know what DeepWell is, can you give us kind of a broad overview of DeepWell?
Yeah, sure. DeepWell is a company founded by Ryan Douglas and Mike Wilson, two giants in their respective fields, on the premise that video games are good for you. And the company has been established to set out to prove that. And although this is a very new and emerging and very exciting field, it's a field that everybody involved in the company, and there's quite a few people involved in the company now, feel incredibly passionate and connected about. It's a real mission. It's a brand new vista, and we're all very, very excited about exploring this space.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think that, we've all felt it. Games are already therapeutic. If they weren't, we wouldn't play them so much. We wouldn't spend so much time in these worlds. So we aim to kind of like deepen that understanding, not only for games moving forward, but existing games as well.
Okay. Now, I know we have quite a few questions. We're going to have questions in the chat. So if you guys have questions in the chat, make sure to feel free to throw them in there, and I will be sure to ask Tom and Shahid those questions. But when you mention like play is therapeutic, I know as a streamer, I know that there are some games that I play that are therapeutic for different reasons. Like there are games that I play that help me kind of like tune out the day. For instance, I've done Minecraft streams where I would label them like construction therapy, where I would just go and play Minecraft and kind of build stuff. And there's another game that I played. It's an indie game, if I'm not mistaken, called Islanders, which is just a really simple like city building game. You just place things on an island, but it has really relaxing music. And I have found that sometimes those types of things are what kind of help me relax. Meanwhile, I have other friends who play like Call of Duty to relax because it helps them kind of like work through any anger that they have. I know that you guys' company slogan is play well, stay well. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means to you and how developers can make games with mental health and wellness at their core? Because I know those examples I've given are all great mainstream games, but in the indie space, there's a lot more that can be done along that.
I never know when to jump in, so Shahid, I'm always like, I can let your wisdom speak here, but generally I feel that like any form of entertainment, there's so many different things that you can pull from each genre. Like you'd mentioned Call of Duty, and like hyper-violent games in essence, there were a lot of studies done, I think it was like the early 90s, maybe the late 90s, that were done trying to prove that there was a correlation between violence raising in America and violence in video games, to continue throwing Doom under the bus and games like that. And once they found that the inverse was true, they kind of swept them under the rug. So it's hilarious to me that there is this like cathartic release that we get from violence that you just look at and you think, oh, this is ugly. This is something that we shouldn't really be spending our time doing. But I do think that within reason, you could probably find value in every game that you play. I know that there's games I play that have really just helped me continue socializing and staying in contact with friends throughout the pandemic that isn't inherent to the game itself, but it serves as a conduit to connect with others and to really make sure that I was talking to people other than myself every day. But in the indie space, I find that already, before we even get to the idea of therapy and helping people, that it's where new ideas tend to thrive because of the lower overheads, because of the smaller teams. You tend to have more of a soul in these games. More experimentation, more of a what do I want to see in video games that I never get to explore. And I think that that's where you really find the games that, at least on some emotional level, seem to touch me, really get their claws in. And if once an indie does it well, that's when the AAA swoop in and steal their mechanics so that they can make sure that they don't end up wasting millions and millions trying new things.
Tactically acquired. I'm just going to borrow this mechanic and.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, without wishing to stress shooters at all, the studies and the literature attached to those studies shows that when parents, for example, take the example of children, parents have been worried about their kids experiencing a difficult emotional situation in a video game, whether it be through engagement with somebody else online or just with an issue in the game. They found that parents who pulled their kids out of that situation weren't necessarily benefiting them. And one of the things that we know about children is that over the recent decades, we have become very careful to expose them less and less to situations they would have been exposed to decades ago. So what helps with that? Well, play does, because play is a nice, safe space for children to practice life. And what are video games except an interactive and logic-driven and player action-driven simulation of certain parts of life and certain parts of life that don't even exist. And the beauty of that is that coming out of playing a video game, coming out of what might be a difficult experience in a video game, is actually beneficial. Just to face that difficulty and overcome it in that safe, constrained space is enormously beneficial. So the idea, for example, I mean, Tom was referring to studies conducted to show the inverse of what we found to be true. And that is absolutely the case, that people have been able to work through issues with video games and become healthier, which is just staggering, just through playing a video game in a way that perhaps they'd never have experienced in a traditional game, right? Because in traditional games tend to be much more moderated by adults. And that makes it slightly harder for kids to experience that benefit. Anyone who knows someone who's played Minecraft at a young age, Minecraft is one of many, many examples, of course. I'd rather not pinpoint specific games, but let's just take Minecraft as an example. Especially during the pandemic, the amount of collaboration, skill building that was taking place, negotiations were taking place, friend making was taking place, creativity, all of these things. This all came from video games, a controlled environment that allows people of all ages to connect and grow and to practice something that will eventually be of some use to them in life. These are the things that we find extremely exciting. And for us, it's just been a joy to see that so many studies have shown the benefit of the very thing that we spent our lives engaging in.
Yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, you saw a game like Animal Crossing just explode and people got so into that, and it was just like gave everybody that wholesome feeling they needed, I think. And over the last 2 years, you've seen like wholesome games become a thing and really like take off, and people are gravitating towards that more and more because they just need that like comfort in their lives, and video games are providing that.
There's a game called A Short Hike that did that for me. It's a lovely little experience. It's just I got to feel like I was exploring. I got to interact with a bunch of colorful characters, and it was like the perfect size. So, yeah, I love it.
I mentioned my niece because I've over the last couple of years, she's been very much getting into video games, and Minecraft was kind of the first game that she really started to get into. During the pandemic, her birthday came around, and she, of course, because everyone was social distancing, she couldn't have a birthday party. So my brother-in-law calls me and he goes, "Hey, can I borrow? I know you have an extra Xbox. Can I borrow your Xbox?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, okay. I'll get it all packed up and everything." And I was like, "Do you need me to download any games to it?" He goes, "No, it's for Delilah. We're going to download Minecraft because she's having a Minecraft birthday party. She's going to be playing on the Xbox version, and all of her friends are going to join Xbox Live parties, and then they're going to hang out in Minecraft." And I remember I remember having that thought of like, that's amazing. That's a really, really cool thing to get to see. And I realized that that was one of those things that I kind of took for granted. Even though when the pandemic started, I did end up kind of dipping my toe into Animal Crossing, mostly because I couldn't help but find the memes of Isabelle and Doom Guy super wholesome, and I really wanted to play Doom Eternal. And I was like, I feel like if I don't get his best friend's game, he's going to be upset with me. But also as a kid who I was born in the in the 80s, so I grew up during the time when Mortal Kombat was coming to consoles, and I remember the whole Mortal Monday thing. And I remember also seeing those Senate hearings where they were talking about how games were violent and all this other stuff. And I always thought that was a weird thing because I was like, I played Mortal Kombat and Tomb Raider and Resident Evil, and I never felt any more violent. So it's cool to kind of see that that's a thing that that we're seeing the inverse of. And then once we saw that that was the inverse, even though the people that were trying to use that information to kind of cut the teeth out of video games, the people who were developing them went, okay, well, maybe we can do more with this. Maybe we can push it more. So I feel like there were a lot of games that ended up being unintentional therapy. For instance, Animal Crossing was a game that became unintentional therapy for a lot of people. You couldn't go to your friend's house in real life, so you would go to their house in Animal Crossing. Are there any other examples of play as therapy that you guys can think of, or can you share any of the actual science behind the concept of play as therapy?
Tetris is a good example. There was actually, I don't know if it was a UK scientist, but basically there was a sample size of 73, I think, where after a car accident, there were signs of PTSD. They would take the person aside, they would give them Tetris to play as a distraction, and they would say, while playing, think about those traumatic memories, think about the hardest parts of this. And they found that a significant portion actually diminished the signs of PTSD through playing Tetris. There's something about activating the brain. It's almost like where shower thoughts come from, I believe, where once you have a focus on something else, once you're able to, wade in the waters of pleasure and just distract yourself away from whatever's constantly nagging at your brain and saying, focus on me, that it allows us to push it to a different area where we can process. This is not scientific at all. I'm not a scientist. This is me just contemplating, looking at other people's study. But it's that we've also learned that Ryan has this great example where he talks about the effectiveness of play in kind of recalibrating our brain and learning. And his example goes if I was to hand you a controller and give you a 30 sequence input and say, memorize this up, down, A, B, X, all these things. And how long would it take you to do that? And it's it would take me ages. I'm not gonna just remember the sequence, but yet you build that into a game. You basically teach the people the mechanics and why they need to put these things in, hey, run over here, collect this, grab this, and through that process, those little hits of dopamine are going to reinforce that this is something you want to do, and it's going to quickly teach you. You see it in fighting games. You learn your inputs and your sequences pretty quickly because the output is something that you desire. It's not just a series of inputs. there's a broad net, and I'm going to tangent way too much. So I think that's my, but like all this stuff is really interesting and I love it. So sorry if I'm jumping around too
Yeah,
much. But
that's an excellent point. It's not a tangent at all. I think you hit upon the core of the message, because another thing that Ryan talks about is the adherence to video games. And one of the difficult areas that Ryan found in his work in medical devices was that patient adherence was so low.
yeah,
And the beauty of video games, of course, is that adherence is sky high. You get a good video game, you're going to do it. And then we ask ourselves, okay, well, how is this making people better? It's the game itself that makes people better in so many different dimensions. And we've talked about the creativity benefits, but there are real cognitive benefits that have been demonstrated time and time again. And cognitive
yeah,
function is better, social adjustment is better, which I found absolutely incredible. That something like social adjustment could be better through playing more video games, but it appears to be the case. Video games help people to regulate their emotions. They teach people resilience, persistence, success, failure, and how to handle
yeah.
these in a controlled environment. Yeah, so no, that's a good point, Tom. Absolutely central, in fact.
That's actually when you were touching on Minecraft and like how, again, not to point at a single game, but I think that you touched on the positives, but I think that there's amazing benefits and the negatives as well. Like you learn how to deal with grief in Minecraft because after putting your love and your time into something, to have someone come and just dismiss it or destroy it, it's like
Mm-hmm.
those traits are as important as well. Because learning how to effectively deal with negative emotion is the difference in sharing your pain in a way that hurts others or being able to deal with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that I think that's really interesting. Um,
Yeah, I mean, personally,
anyway,
I can say
wanna
that before I
go
started
ahead.
before I started, seeing a professional therapist, games were definitely the way that I sought out and got therapy. Just by what you said, all those like tasks that you have to focus on, and it just like gives your brain something to think about other than like I was having really bad anxiety, like really bad, and
Mhm.
games would just really help with that by giving me all those different things, goals and tasks, and just it would take my mind off it for a while and give me a little reprieve from what I was feeling, and make me feel better for a bit, anyways.
Mhm. Did you have just out of curiosity, did you have a game that really did that for you that you'd like to share about or no?
I mean, I played a ton of like the Fallout games, Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, just because you could be in there and not really do anything, but still have a good time for like hours. And uh,
Yeah.
there's just like so many those Bethesda games. There's just like so much to do and see and explore, and it just kind of takes you out of whatever you're going through, and then it teaches you a lot about interactions and cause and effect and how to deal with your emotions about different things. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was probably it for me.
That's cool.
I think one of the games that I've found recently that has helped me kind of work through any anxiety and stuff that I've been working through is Destiny 2. Just because Destiny 2 is kind of a multiplayer game where there's a lot of different, players of different skill levels that are in the game, but you start
Mhm.
learning where some new players end up kind of starting off because the game has a natural story and a natural story progression. So there were times when I was feeling kind of just having issues with like positivity, like just feeling like there's enough positive energy around. And then I would go to like places like those kind of starter areas and help people in things they were doing. Like I would see they were struggling fighting an enemy or doing an activity, and I would jump in and help and kind of then go off. And it's one of those things that I always thought it was just, well, I'm just jumping in and shooting some stuff and leaving. But a friend of
Mhm.
mine had just started playing the game, and they were like, I was playing this game and I was having this really difficult time fighting this one mission and I kept losing in it. And then some random dude came in and just obliterated this monster that I found. And I was like, when I get to the point where I'm strong enough, I want to come back and help other people. And in a game, that's one of those things that you don't think about because I want to help
Yeah.
other people. I want to help other people in this game because it helps myself. But when you think about what that does in terms of how you view interaction outside of games, it becomes I wonder if there's any correlation between that and like people who are more willing to help outside of games as well. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time. I do want to talk a little bit about the game jam itself, though, because we've talked a lot about play as therapy and things like that. But what do you hope developers learn from this experience? Because I know that in making these games, there are also things that they naturally are going to take away from it as well. So what are you hoping game devs learn from this experience in this game jam?
To mindfully make games, I think that there are so many different mechanisms that can be used to act as therapy. It could be simple as a concept, such as distraction or emotional reinforcement or dealing with grief, or it can be something that that is, I don't want to say more physical, I think would be the right word, like controlling of breath, light therapy, any like sound therapy, any of these situations where you're thinking about the toolbox, the series of mechanics, the series of the framework in which you're building a game, and mindfully building it, not just to create the coolest shit you can think of, or like what's the most fun, or imitating something you might love, but instead really saying, what have I been feeling, or what have I been dealing with that I wish somebody was giving me, like what is something that I could really use right now, and building that into a game. I don't speak for DeepWell, I speak for myself here, and I think that's what I'm really intrigued to see, is just that soul and that personal touch, that people can bring to a game that they think that other games aren't providing them, because I think that's where innovation lies.
Yeah, I'd like them to know that what they do affects people in a way that perhaps they'd never quite connected with before. It's certainly something that I hadn't personally really absorbed and internalized. The idea that the experience that as a creator you're molding has the potential to change somebody's life. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of the discoveries we've been looking into in the recent months, and for Ryan and Mike longer than that, is that the net balance of the effect is not just positive, it's actually healthy. And it's not just healthy, but in many cases it's therapeutic. And this is, for somebody like myself who's been in the video games industry this year 40 years, that's nirvana. The idea that this field can make people feel better. This is the thing that I would like game developers all over the world to realize, that what they're doing can heal people.
Yeah, those are great points. And the global game jam, our mission is to connect people and unite the world through the joy of game creation. And rallying around the theme of mental health is really important, I think, and showing people that it's okay to talk about these things, and that games can have that positive impact in a different way than you might expect, in helping people with issues that they're struggling with, and create those bonds. And that empathy is really important for us, and we hope that people take that away from this experience. And just the first game that I worked on many years ago was this game called Quantum Conundrum that was like a Portal type puzzle game, and we kind of intentionally made that thinking about somebody with playing it with their kids on a couch, basically. And shortly after it was released, I heard from a friend who has kids that they did exactly that. Like, he played it with his kids, and they just had a great time. And it was like the first game that his kids ever sat still for and wanted to keep playing with their dad, and they got to have that great moment. So that was really impactful for me as a developer.
That's beautiful. Deal. So, Tim, I know that we've talked about several different game jams, but for those of you who are in chat who may not know how a game jam works, would you like to kind of explain the basics of a game jam for anyone who might be a new participant for the mental health game jam?
Yeah, absolutely. We welcome everybody to join the gym. If you've ever jammed with us or not, you're welcome to come join. We have a Discord set up you can find us. We're the Global Game Jam Discord. It's on our website, globalgamejam.org. There's once you get there, there are a bunch of channels set up for the jam specifically. There's looking for group channels where you can either post that you are available in the Recruit Me channel, or you can post that you're a team that's looking for somebody specific in the Join Our Team channel. There's announcements channels. There's channels for inspiration, channels to ask us organizers questions or ask the mentors on the DeepWell side questions and get information about your game that you're working on. The jam itself runs from noon today Pacific time through May 22nd, and we'll have a couple of feedback sessions set up throughout the gym for you to show us what you're working on and get a little insight on that. But yeah, we welcome anyone from any discipline, whether you know how to make a game or not. You're welcome to try it out and join a team and learn how to do that.
So one of the questions we had in chat was Gina was asking, are we aiming to develop a tool which could help people mentally during a game jam or an actual playful game? And I'm pretty sure that the answer to that is developing an actual playful game that can be therapeutic. But can we talk a little bit about the theme and criteria for games made at this jam? Because that might kind of help clarify that for Gina in this instance.
I'll let them talk about theme, but I want to just add to that real quick that one of the focuses of DeepWell is to make games first. Not in essence like, here's your medicine, how can we gamify it? Because that's not effective. It's more so games themselves being mindfully designed, and games that are fun. Because if they're not fun, there's no retention. If people don't want to play it, if they don't get joy out of it, it's like you can have the best medical device in the world, but if it's sitting in your closet, what good does it help, right? So this is about really touching that part of our brain that's like, oh, I enjoy doing this, I want to continue doing it. So definitely a fun game is the first step, and then mindfully designing it to be therapeutic is the very necessary second step. But anyway, I'll defer to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, we have a link right under Alchemist there where you can find all the information about the theme and criteria. The main criteria we're looking at, as Tom said, is to make it fun, maximize entertainment, to make your game engaging and playable, demonstrate how your game theme and mechanics address stress, anxiety, or other related symptoms of depression, and then use your game to foster community support and understanding of mental health challenges and conditions, which we've been talking about so far this morning, or today here on this panel.
Yeah, we try to keep it simple.
Now, there's a question that's kind of bouncing around in my head. So one of the things I found, especially over the last couple of years when I've been kind of following game development outside of just a gamer, like I'm following the development cycle of games and how long games take to work, and just like the things that go into delaying a game and things like that. And one of the things that we've all heard come up a lot of times is crunch. We know that that's a very large problem in the game dev space, but also a problem in other industries as well. But it's more palpable in game design because there's this balance that needs to be struck by fandoms of games, because I want my devs to take care of themselves because I want them to continue making the thing that I love. But then people can be kind of not understanding when it comes time to like, okay, well, for us to take care of ourselves, we need to delay this game 6 months. And like, well, no, I was looking forward to playing this. Do you have any advice for game devs who are working on this jam to make a therapeutic game that will make sure that they also take care of themselves while working on it? Because I find like if I'm writing something or working on something creative, if I'm stressed out or I'm anxious or I'm angry, I will see it in my art. I will see it in my writing. So do you have any advice for game devs to kind of help take care of themselves while they're doing this?
I'm going to leave the art side to Tom, but I'm happy to cover certainly the physical side because I've experienced a lot of the downsides and I'm still alive to tell the tale. So, Tom, do you want to start with the more important and
Yeah,
probably as important creative stuff?
there was that viral tweet that I'm gonna screw it up as I think about it, but it basically paraphrasing was like, I authentically want smaller and uglier games, you know, like it's like because in essence the experience and the emotion matters more than those things that eat up all your time. You know what I'm saying? So like it, you know, if you need to pull assets from the asset store, if you need to just, you know, use some programmer art, if you really want to, um, you know, just get something in and make it feel good, that's at least from my perspective, what matters more, as long as you're taking care of yourself. Because game development can be glacial. It can be a very slow moving process where, you know, you have to get into that minutia. And I think that's why we see crunch across the board in these huge games is because there's every piece of it has to be, you know, labored on. Well, the beauty of a jam is that you have a finite amount of time, you have a finite set of resources. So it's really about taking like a game that really feels like, in my opinion, like a piece of raw ore. You know, it's like, you know, there's value in it, you know, there's something beautiful. And it's just like us as players and judges, like we can't see that and know that, you know, with more time, we would see all the things that the developer wishes it could be in that short window. But don't let perfect be the enemy of great or good enough, you know, like, so just, jams are supposed to be fun. Jams are supposed to be something where you're able to, you know, put some time in and enjoy yourself. And if you find yourself just, feeling demoralized and abused, then don't do it. Like, that's maybe easier said than done, but uh, yeah.
So I'm going to say a couple of things about this that have absolutely nothing to do with creativity, given that Tom is the expert there and I know absolutely nothing about it. I would, more than anything, recommend getting enough sleep. It sounds like such a trite and simple thing to say, especially when people who do shorter game jams tend to sacrifice their sleep in order to cram as much work in as possible. But let's face it, the effects of sleep deprivation on the brain's executive function is very well documented now. It's just not
Mhm.
worth it. I mean, just cut short your sleep by 2 hours. You are as dangerous driving a car as if you'd been drinking. Those are the facts. And there are a lot of people driving around in a state of drunkenness because they've not had enough sleep. A major cause of road traffic accidents is not having enough sleep. And what you're doing is a creative endeavor that requires stamina, it requires a lot of brain power, requires immense creativity. Your brain, as you know, uses up a tremendous amount of fuel. So make sure you're eating healthily and well, and make sure you're getting enough water, but most importantly, getting enough sleep. Now I'm going to say something a little philosophical about crunch, for which I hope I will not be fired, but I think it's worth saying. So the way I look at crunch is there are two types. Neither are good, but they require
Mhm.
different types of intervention. Imagine a brand new rocket design. Traditional rockets use a jet of high velocity exhaust. You are
Mhm.
being pushed towards a target. You
Mhm.
feel G forces and you can only sustain so many. That is traditional crunch where you're working for a company. You're being pushed into a state that is almost impossible to bear and you certainly don't enjoy it. Okay, you're strapped into this rocket against your will. You have no idea how long you're going to be enduring these high G forces. It's extremely stressful. When you're doing something you love, it's like a brand new rocket ship has been invented with a gravity drive. The gravity drive exerts absolutely no stress on the body at all. It pulls you towards where you want to go, and the velocity can be, to all intents and purposes, as fast as you want it to be. Now, Why is that important? What it means is that with traditional crunch, you're working crazy hard and you don't want to. The difference in crunch type 2 is you're working crazy hard on something that you love because you love it. So in the first situation, you yourself feel enough pain that you might be prepared to make some kind of intervention. In the second case, you need somebody like a friend to step in and say, hey, you need sleep, you need to eat, you look rough, right? So I would urge you that even in this case where you're doing something that you love, that you still look after yourself, you don't push yourself too hard. It doesn't necessarily give you the benefits that you think it does. And I say this after decades of having tried that approach, and it's never worked for me. In very, very short bursts, you can get results, but I would strongly urge people. I mean, this is not an overnight jam, right? You've got a little bit of time to pace yourselves. Do exactly what Tom says. Tom's advice is gold. Get yourself assets from the asset store if that's what you're going to do. Make sure that you're putting your work into the right areas, and make sure you look after yourself during the process, because many of the people who are doing the jam are working jobs already, right? They're going to be doing this in their own time. They might well be tempted to sacrifice on sleep to hit their target. Just focus on the stuff Tom asks you to focus on, and trust that the people on our team will be able to look out for the right things.
Yeah, and try to avoid the hypocrisy of hurting yourself to help others. It doesn't have to be an or proposition, like that's so. Yeah, the most the first person you should be taking care of in this situation is you. So, like, a happy, a healthy person is going to make a better game, I think, than someone who's torturing themselves to get something out in time.
As a person who struggles with all of those things in different areas of my life, I would like you to know that I'm both happy to hear that advice from Shahid and Tom, and feel slightly targeted by the things that I've heard them say. I'm not going to ask if you have cameras in my apartment. I'm just going to ask that we shut those down for a little bit so I can try to adjust. But you're right. I've worked in situations. I've been in employment situations where we had to kind of push ourselves for long periods of time. While I was enlisted, it's kind of one of those things you can't really avoid. And I've also had projects that I've been working on where I've been very excited and very happy about them. And then you look at the clock and you go, holy crap, it's 10 o'clock, it's 11 o'clock. I started on this at 1. So I know that that's one of those things that can be difficult to kind of keep track of. But I think the advice that Tom and Shahid have given is really, really gold for all of you who are going to be working on this game jam. I do want to ask one more question regarding therapeutic games. And then if you guys are okay, I'd like to ask more questions about DeepWell, like DeepWell itself, because I know there have been a couple people in chat that have had some questions about you guys. So I'll try to ask all the ones that I think are relevant. But can you tell us a little bit about certifying a game as a therapeutic tool? Like, I know that there's one thing to say, this game I made to help with depression and anxiety, but it's another thing to say, I made this game to help with depression and anxiety, and I would like psychiatrists or therapists to be able to prescribe my game. Is there a process to kind of you have to go through to make that a reality?
Yeah, I'll
There is a
take this one.
process.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
just as some medical devices can be put through FDA approval, we suspect this might well be possible for a video game. But that said, we're focusing for now on looking at being kind of like an on-ramp for established treatment options for mental health conditions.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. That's an interesting kind of concept too, because you imagine, like, yeah, you could develop a game solely with the purposes of like helping with PTSD. For instance, something that is kind of important to me is PTSD for soldiers returning from war zones, because that's a thing that's very difficult to kind of work through. Military therapists are, in my opinion, sometimes not always they don't always have the focus of the individual in mind. They have the focus of, are you a danger in mind? And as long as you're not a danger, then you're good, even though you yourself might still have things you need to work on. So finding something that is designed for that is kind of difficult, but having something that is an on ramp to maybe going to see a therapist to talk about mindfulness is something that I feel could also have a lot of kind of benefit to it, because it becomes one of those things of, well, I've already been doing this for 3 months while I've been playing this game. It's not going to hurt for me to go and do this in person. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really kind of cool idea of kind of having this be an on ramp to other treatment options. This is a question I think I have for all of you guys, because it's a two direction kind of thing. Um, why is Global Game Jam partnering with DeepWell with this game jam and this theme? And why was DeepWell looking forward to partnering with Global Game Jam to work on this? So I'll ask Tim first about why he partnered with you guys, and then I'll ask you guys why you were excited to partner with Global Game Jam.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, like our mission is to connect people through game creation all over the world and break down barriers that exist in other ways in society. So for us, it just makes total sense. And personally, mental health is a very important topic for me, one that I'm passionate about, and so I'm really excited to work with DeepWell on this and see what our creative community can come up with to help each other and help game players out there to with their own mental health journeys. And we have such a vibrant community of game developers already established through our main Global Game Jam event all over the world that it just makes sense to bring this opportunity to them as a chance to work on this subject and perhaps win some prizes from the gym.
Yeah, we're big believers in expertise. And when it comes to medicine and science, we like to trust the experts in this matter. And we have many of those people on our team. And the same is true, obviously, of a discipline as complicated and multifaceted as a global game jam. And there's really just one organization that's at the absolute pinnacle of that. So we're delighted to be partnering with Global Game Jam for this event.
Yeah, we really just appreciate what they stand for and what they do. So being able to, we're very curious in seeing other people's takes and really having um, just a wide net of experience and perspective and mind share when it comes to how games can help people. And I don't think we're blind to think that our perspective is best or that we may have the best idea. I think when you're starting what I consider to be like a whole new field, in essence, of games as therapy, it's easy to just grab the low hanging fruit in the beginning. And then
Mhm.
there's so much that is beyond our perspective at the moment because of our situation in life or because of our interests, that being able to see and touch so many other lives, just in the sense of finding other developers with different perspectives and different interests and different challenges, is really cool.
Okay. So I want to ask my lovely DeepWell devs a question really quick. And what is your vision for DeepWell and like mental health related games in the next like 5 to 10 years? I know that this is something that's kind of starting to branch out, and this is
Mhm.
something that we don't see a lot of things that are focused or targeted towards this. So where would you guys like to see mental health related games in the next 5 to 10 years?
Um, Shahid, would you like to take this, or would you like me to?
I'll take it, and you can take it. Let's tag team. Um,
Boom.
I'd like to see DeepWell as one of the most important players in a massive field. And we know that the mental health crisis is real, that it is escalating, that it is um, a pandemic of its own kind. Truly, it's going to have an enormous strain on the World Health Services. And it needs to be met by more, and if you'll pardon the pun, creative measures than we have available at the moment. And we think video games could be part of a solution. And in many ways, a much more powerful solution than we realized, a much more effective solution than we realized. So for us to be one of the major players, if not the major player in the next 5 to 10 years, is something I really aspire to. I mean, I hope that the space will be occupied by many players who take this field seriously.
Yeah.
Because sadly, it is a huge field. And for many people to have been healed through the power of video games.
Yeah. My desire is, this problem is way bigger than DeepWell. We can't handle it all. I think that to be the gatekeepers of, like games as therapy or mindfulness development would just be, too selfish and too broad. I don't. So personally, I think that just moving the perspective and the discussion to the point where we have a big enough impact to where you have the AAA studios, the major publishers, adding in options or considering therapeutic elements to their games, like we saw the accessibility boom. I don't think those need to be divorced from each other. And I don't think we need a sole monopoly on that. I think that it's like doing what we can to push things forward, doing what we can to develop the best games we can. But at the same time, I want to see a shift in the way we approach games and really just get as many people on board as possible to mindfully create and mindfully develop their games as well.
Now, there was a question that we had in chat, and then Mubot had a cow and freaked out and like nuked a bunch of the messages, but we were able to get the information back, which I think is actually a really good question. Wishing Rock was saying they wanted to clarify how the games are being judged. They said if they're understanding it correctly, they're looking for a game that offers the most fun while simultaneously invoking positive psychological effect on the player that they can take with them into their daily life. They were wondering which would be considered more important in this jam from a judge's perspective, fun or helpfulness. And I feel like I could imagine that that's one of those things that is going to be an important kind of balance for devs or for prospective developers to know. So from each of your perspectives, which do you think would be considered more, important's the wrong word, but where would you tell someone to put their focus?
Well, fun is helpful.
I think that it's very hard to quantify because there's so many variables that go into a game that I think it's something you're going to have to feel. You can't just outright say, no, here it needs to be 40% therapy and 60% fun. Like, and I know that's frustrating. I know it's annoying, but it's like,
see, this is it. This is what you were saying earlier, Tom. You hit this. You hit the nail on the head earlier when talking about how Ryan describes video games, that the games in themselves are the therapy, right? So when I say that focus on the fun, so that's it. That's what makes them helpful. If Animal Crossing had not been fun, would it have helped you? It's got to be so. It's not that fun comes at the expense of helpfulness. It's that you will make the game necessarily helpful if people stay engaged. That's the beauty of the video game. By adherence, compliance, whatever you want to, whichever word you want to use to describe a player's willingness and happiness and curiosity to explore and complete a game. That's it, right?
And I would say, though, that it is important to make sure that the therapeutic element doesn't feel like a vestigial limb, something that's just tacked on and
totally.
And not important, because I do believe that you're defining what it is you believe to be therapeutic about your game. So you define how stringent it is that you pursue that. So luckily, that's not like a set of handcuffs. That's kind of like you build the framework and tell us what you think, and then we can tell you if it's effective or not for us. But generally, uh, that's what I'm really intrigued with, is just, what perspectives and what approaches to some mechanism um, will feel really compelling and really interesting. Uh, yeah, I wish I was able to give that person a very clear and concise answer. But it's almost like if you're watching a film, it's like, well, how much do you want it to be story versus the aesthetic? And it's like some movies I love are purely aesthetic and there's like no story to it whatsoever. And others
Mhm.
are, very much just people talking for 2 hours. It's like with very little happening as far as the cinematography is concerned. So it's really just what is the value and what does it bring? And are you along for the ride? And you can only sit in the seat and feel it. It's not as, I can't intellectualize it to the point where, again, I could just give an exact uh, Venn diagram or, percentage for the person.
What it feels like I've gathered from listening to you guys kind of discuss not only games as therapy, but therapeutic games is there are, there are movies that get made every year that we know are made just to appeal to the Oscars. We know this. We
Mhm.
hear it happens so frequently that there is a term for it. Oscar bait movies.
Yeah.
They are movies that are targeted towards one very small audience. And the problem is that although they may be targeted towards the academy to try and sway them or speak to them, in some cases those movies don't end up finding wide acclaim until they win their Academy Award and everyone wants to watch them. Meanwhile, there are movies that win the Academy Award for Best Picture that are just good movies, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit more satisfying when a movie is a good movie and then it wins awards. So
Yeah.
if I can kind of answer from what I've gathered in terms of this, it seems like the things that is most important from a judging perspective is just putting forth the best game you can. And if you've put forth the best game you can, then that in and of itself will be helpful. On the flip
Yeah.
side, don't tack on some kind of if you're designing the game with the thought of mindfulness and helpfulness and fun in mind, those things will naturally kind of come together. You won't have to figure out which percentage is which. And each dev during this game jam might have a different percentage of what's more important than the other. So it's not about what the judges feel is more important from their perspective. It's about what the jammers feel is more important from their perspective.
You kind of touched on something I think is very important in art, period, which
Mhm.
is um, if you create art with the pursuit of trying to please someone that isn't yourself, and you fail and they don't like it. You make an Oscar bait movie that you didn't really care about, but the Oscars didn't choose you, the Academy didn't give you an award. You're left with something you don't feel good about, you're not proud of, and you're just like, I wasted my time. But if you make a film that I don't want to talk about film, if you make a game that you just fucking love and you believe so deeply in, and it doesn't get that Oscar, it doesn't get that award, it doesn't win the jam, you still have a piece of art that you're incredibly proud of and that, has value. So I I'd say, like, don't chase what you think will like. Chase what gives you passion, what excites you, what really feels good to you, because passion is infectious. Passion is what creates all the stuff we love in the world, so um so yeah, stand behind your art and make something great. Don't just guess what we'll like and try to make that.
I'm so glad you said that, Tom, because I had an inquiry from somebody who wanted to enter the jam. I think it was yesterday, might even been this morning. And I
Hmm.
said, I've got these two ideas. This one I think will be more suitable for um, some kind of therapeutic effect, and it's
Hmm.
VR. And there's this one, which might not be as therapeutic, but I love this idea. Which should I do? And I said the one that makes you feel the most passionate. So, yeah. I'm glad you gave me that answer. Otherwise, I would have had to have written a very quick apology and retraction. My colleague Tom has actually said.
Yeah, I again, not to get too philosophical, but like time is the only currency we have in life, rich or poor, and we don't know how much we have of it. So spend it what you think isn't doing what you think is important. And in this regard, like helping people or attempting to help people and doing something you're passionate about, they're not at odds. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Just on the judging front, I did want to mention that we have a great panel of judges of industry veterans and mental health professionals. Shahid is one of the judges, along with Kate Edwards, who's our outgoing executive director here at Global Game Jam and one of our board members. Rami Ishmael is also one of the judges. American McGee, who created the Alice games. And then we also have Dr. Lisa Marin and Dr. Anne Marie Porter. Dr. Marin is a PhD in neuropsychology, and Dr. Porter is a PhD in health psychology and video game research. So we have a really great panel of judges that will be looking at all the games that are made. And I see we have a lot of like logistical type questions in the chat that we can answer more in detail over on Discord if you join us there. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
What a great panel.
So I know we're getting close to time, so I want to give Tom and Shahid an opportunity to tell people like where they can, if they want to find out more information about DeepWell or more anything that you want to kind of talk about or plug. I want to give you guys the opportunity to do that. I'm actually going to be looking forward to this game jam, not more or less than the previous ones, but just personally, I have a bigger mental health is something that's very passionate to me, especially considering like some of the things that have happened in terms of just in the world the last 2 years. Mental health has become a very important touching point because with the pandemic and being trapped at home, people had to kind of confront those issues. I learned that I can't really drown my demons because they learned how to swim at some point. So I've had to deal with a lot of mental health and kind of just going about that journey on my own. So I want to give this opportunity to talk about where people can find you and more about DeepWell if they can find out more about it.
Cool.
Well, our website is deepwelldtx.com. And if you go to the bottom, you can connect with us on Insta, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can also subscribe to various newsletters and get updates from us regularly. I think that's well worth doing to keep updated. There's also a link to the Game Jam if for some reason you haven't seen that yet. And I'm assuming you have by this point. But yeah, there are also some interesting videos there that kind of explain our mission, featuring some of our founders. I think Tom might be in one of the videos as well, if I remember correctly.
Yep. So if this isn't enough for you, come up. I think that one of the important factors of DeepWell social media presence, at least thus far, is that it really seems to highlight and share the broader concept of this space, not just DeepWell's impact in it. So, it's not like you're following, like Facebook just telling you how sick Facebook is. You're like, yo, we don't ruin countries. Yo, we don't ruin families. Like, we're just a social, like, that's not our goal. Our goal is to grow this platform so we can continue shining the light on other people making great therapy and great games. So I do think if this is a space that you're interested in, following DeepWell on socials seems to have that focus, not just sharing DeepWell's stuff. So I got nothing to plug. So take care of yourself, everyone. That's what I want to plug, is taking care of your mental health while jamming on these games. So
Absolutely. Yeah, just, join us on the gym, make some new friends, have some
Mhm.
great new experiences, learn from each other, be open, be mindful, be vulnerable, just take this time to really connect and uh, open yourself up to this experience and help each other and help others through the power of video games.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. But I'm not going to hold you guys any longer. I have been your host, Alchemist, and I look forward to seeing what games you guys make for this game jam. Although I am not a judge, I will definitely be keeping an eye out because some of these things might be games that end up being something that could be streamed and helping people with mental health, and that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to. So until then, I'm hoping you guys will be able to get ready to get started because I know we started noon. So jammers, I want you to go ahead and start getting your ideas together. Remember, make the thing that you're passionate about, not the thing you think will make the best medicine. Looking at you, you know who you are. And until next time, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep those gloves up. All right. Later.
Thank you.